Good evening, America and around the world. Never before has a nation been so interested in a bunch of people using paper slips and separating them into buckets that bear the logos of Target and even the Chicago Cubs. That is exactly what is happening in Iowa. At this moment, this is the Iowa caucus. This is where the 2016 election begins to turn. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome to this special edition of The Hardline. Let's start right off the top. The numbers are starting to come in, and they are somewhat surprising. Let's be quite frank here. Some people never saw this one coming. First of all, on the Democratic side, let's update. This is now 69% of the precincts reporting with their caucus votes. Hillary Clinton barely hanging on, beating Bernie Sanders 51 to 49%, Martin O'Malley with 1%. Now let's talk about what really has people discussing what's cooking in Iowa. 62% reporting in Iowa. Donald Trump, when he came into this, he had massive leads. Every single press conference Donald Trump was at, he talked about the fact that he was holding huge leads over everybody else. It has not shown up this evening. Ted Cruz is leading with 28%, Donald Trump 25%. Marco Rubio is now sneaking up on the Donald. He is now only 3 points behind at 22%. And from there you go Ben Carson, Rand Paul, Jeb Bush, and everybody else follows along. But this is surprising, especially when you consider Donald Trump once said, if you don't finish first, then you're a loser. Time to dive into what we're hearing and how the political face of the nation is slowly changing. We are joined first by the nationally syndicated columnist, former Republican member of the Georgia House of Representatives, political analyst and pollster, Matt Towery, along with the former Democratic senatorial aide and contributor at The Hill, Brent Budowsky. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. And Matt, I'm going to start with you on the right, because let's be very honest here. Every poll told us that Donald Trump had a huge lead in Iowa, and he kept telling everybody time and time again he was going to blow the field away. It has not happened thus far. What happened?
Well, let me correct you. One poll did not. It was the poll that Newsmax ran yesterday. It was the Opinion Savvy poll, which my son now runs. It showed Trump and Cruz tied and Rubio very close behind. So one poll so far has this right. It does not shock me at all, because Trump did not have the ground game that Cruz has. With 10,000 boots on the ground to turn people out, you're going to come in first place. And Rubio was surging because the Bush supporters and other supporters of other establishment candidates were throwing away the towel and going with Rubio. So we're not shocked at all. And Newsmax was the only major news organization in America to run that poll.
What does this say about Marco Rubio, though, when you look at him now sitting in third place and only being those 3 points behind? Let's put it this way. If one poll says that it was going to be close at the top, it has got to be shocking to Donald Trump's people to see Marco Rubio right on his heels.
I don't think it's shocking to Donald Trump's people. I was in touch with some of those folks. I think Trump knew that he might not win. He's still likely to win New Hampshire, but what it means is that Rubio will be the establishment candidate who will have to try to stop Trump in South Carolina. There's no question about that. And when we get to South Carolina and to the SEC primaries and down to Florida, that's what we poll. That's what we've been doing forever, and that's what we know. And I can tell you right now, Donald Trump is not finished. He is going to still be the major leader in this campaign, but he's going to have to deal with Marco Rubio in the end.
All right. Now, Brent, let me bring you in on this, because first of all, I got a couple of things here on the left, but I want to get to your immediate reaction on what we're seeing with Ted Cruz holding a lead over Donald Trump.
Well, I think that what we have on the Democratic side is they're still neck and neck. I can revisit that later. The most important thing happening tonight, in my opinion, if the numbers hold, Marco Rubio won the Iowa caucus, period. Because the most important thing in the Republican primaries was not who was number 1 or 2 between Trump and Cruz, but who was what I had called in the Hill newspaper Plan C between the two of them, the leader of the more center-right group, and that's between Kasich, Christie, Bush, and Rubio. And the undisputed champion in Iowa is Rubio of that. He has already achieved that. It is a done deal. In that sense, he is a winner of the Iowa caucus. There will be intense pressure on Jeb Bush starting tomorrow morning to drop out. He probably won't as soon as he should, but that is inevitable. I think in New Hampshire, Kasich and Rubio will have Kasich and Christie will have one more chance to establish themselves. But what was important about tonight in both parties by far is not Trump, the most bloated and overcovered blowhard, gasbag, and phony in American politics, but Rubio, the most underestimated, serious candidate for president on the Republican side, and the man, as a Democrat, I promise you, that Democrats fear the most.
Brent, one of these days you have to stop being so shy and you have to tell us exactly how you feel about certain people. We're all going to feel so much better. Listen, I want to just get to the Democratic side of things here, because as we now look at the numbers, with 69% of the Democratic side reporting Hillary Clinton with a very slim lead over Bernie Sanders, we are also finding out now within the last couple of moments that Martin Malley has said that he is dropping out of the presidential race with only 1% of the vote. It makes sense. Some people even said that maybe Unknown would have gotten more votes than Martin O'Malley. First of all, Brent, that's not a shock that Martin O'Malley is getting out. But is it a shock that Hillary Clinton is hanging on to that 2-point lead?
No, the entire Democratic establishment, almost without exception, favors Hillary Clinton and fears Bernie Sanders. There's no question about it.
Wait a minute, Brent. I'm
actually
going to
a
stop you there
miracle.
for just a sec here. I have to, because you
Sure.
hit something. Why do they fear him? Tell us very succinctly why the left is so scared of Bernie Sanders.
Well, the left is not. The Democratic establishment is, and they're two different animals. That when Bernie Sanders talks about a country being dominated by super PACs and bank-friendly money, whether they admit it or not, a lot of Democrats get that money. When he challenges the establishment, a lot of Democrats are part of that establishment, including myself, by the way, but I'm a little more ecumenical than some of my brothers and sisters. They are terrified of real change, because real change threatens the Democratic establishment, the media establishment, the Wall Street establishment, every establishment, all of whom are united against Bernie. It's actually a miracle that even now he has a chance of squeaking out a victory, even though he probably will lose a close contest, and they'll come out of Iowa with about the same number of delegates either way, and then they'll go on to New Hampshire, where Bernie has an edge, and he'll probably win that by less than the polls now show, and then they'll go on, and it's going to be a long fight.
All right, Matt, so let's look at it from that perspective, the scared side, if you will. We're going to keep going over these numbers all night as they come in. But I think that Brent talks about something here that's fascinating to me. The fact that the right and other people fear Bernie Sanders. Look, it was just a couple of months ago, Matt, that we were talking about Bernie Sanders as the guy who couldn't wait to get the 17-year-old kids off his lawn somewhere and have somebody shovel his walk. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking about a guy that they fear. In your opinion, Brent, does the right really fear Bernie Sanders?
I think the right probably thinks he'll be easy to beat. I think the facts show that right now, Bernie would beat Trump by a landslide margin, by a bigger margin than Hillary would. A reasonable case could be made. He can hold that, then there are reasons. A reasonable case to the contrary can be made that when the Republicans attack him, that they'll be able to defeat him. Both sides can be argued right now. But today, Bernie beats Trump by a landslide margin, and I can't get anybody at NBC or CNN that I've known for years to tell the truth about that number that tells more about this election.
I'm going to stop you there for just a minute
else.
Because we're going to come back. Matt, let me come to you then on the right then. From your perspective, on the right, why do they fear Bernie?
First of all, I'm nonpartisan now, but I used to be on the right, and I can explain this from this standpoint. They fear Bernie exactly because of what Ed is saying. Bernie Sanders is tapping into the same sort of vein, except a more expanded sort of vein that we saw Barack Obama tap into in 2008. He has young people. He has people who basically are upset with government. They're tired of the same old politicians. Bernie Sanders is more dangerous for Hillary Clinton than anyone expected. And let me add this to you. Being sort of an expert about the South, whichever candidate decides to choose an African-American running mate, say Deval Patrick from Massachusetts, even though it would be a de facto running mate because you don't do that until the convention, that person, if they do it before South Carolina, will win the South Carolina primary and become the Democratic nominee. And whichever one chooses not to do it will lose it.
I just want to point out, too, very briefly, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, an African-American, has said that he will endorse Marco Rubio tomorrow, which is fascinating as you talk about South Carolina and where we're heading. That's all going to be a part of the discussion. Matt Towery, I want to thank you so much for joining us. By the way, Mr. Budowsky, please, Just tell us a little bit more of how you feel, but we're going to give you a chance to rest. We'll come back later so you can be more honest with us. Brent Budowsky will come back and join us. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Hang tight. All right, now the early results are in from the Associated Press for the Republican caucuses in Iowa. Let's go to Miranda Kahn right now and get some of the numbers. Miranda?
That they are. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, over 75% of the vote is in, and it looks to be a three-man race. Take a look at the numbers right now. Ted Cruz holds a lead over Donald Trump, 28-25. But the real surprise of the night is Marco Rubio. Look at that, 22%. Ben Carson, 10%. Rand Paul, 4%. Jeb Bush, 3%. But again, Marco Rubio, a lot of people, except for maybe himself, did not expect him to do as well as he did. They did think he'd come in third place, but certainly not with those numbers. Now let's take a look at the Democratic side. With over 2/3 of the vote in now, Hillary Clinton holds a very, very slim lead over Bernie Sanders now with 51% to Bernie Sanders 49%. And there you see it, Martin O'Malley has 1%. And that's the very latest from here. Let's head back over to Ed.
All right, Miranda, all done. We'll check up with you here later on in the evening. Dick Morris joins us next. Stay with us. This special edition of The Hardline continues.